Richard Washington. Richard, I wave to everybody. Richard Washington is from Charleston, West Virginia. He was incarcerated from 2018 to 2020 on charges of drug possession after he had spent years struggling with drug addiction, alcoholism, and the effects of childhood trauma. He is now a grace recovery coach, and he describes himself as a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. And Richard, we're so glad that you're here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mariah Prows from Lebanon, Ohio. Mariah is a factory worker. She's a recovering addict. She's formerly homeless, and she's watched as friends and family members have died from overdoses and early deaths. And Mariah now seeks to help build an America that better helps people to recover from addiction. We're very honored that you're here, Mariah. Great to have you here. Thank you, Mariah.
Honored to be here tonight.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So Richard, you take us to the day in 2018. You're sitting in a courtroom and the judge is about to hand down his ruling. So first, tell us what happened that day. And second, what led to your being there in that courtroom that day?
Sitting in the courtroom waiting for the judge to hand me a sentence that I pretty much well deserved. All my loved one passed before my eyes. I'm about to spend a lot of time without the ones I claimed that I love, but I didn't really show it the way I was acting out there in the streets. So just listening to the judge and the prosecutor and my public defender go at it, it's more of, I already accepted a plea bargain of 3 to 25. So I'm about to spend 25 years of my life without my children. Everything I'd done in my past was coming to the forefront. And I was scared. And you're talking about a scared 40-some-year-old man. I was angry because I couldn't believe that I'd done all of this. I was spiritually broken. I was lost in a dark place, sitting in front of the judge, not complaining about the sentence, but just angry because how dare I take myself out of my family life? How dare I take myself out of my children's lives? They didn't ask for this. So I wanted to use that to change. And after he hit the gavel and they took me to the to the cell, I began to look around the cell and say, wow, this is home. Because now I was divorced. I didn't know if my children wanted anything to do with me, especially my adult kids. I'm all alone. And I always remembered that my mom used to say, if you can't talk to me, you can talk to God. And I think that's the first time me and God actually had a honest conversation. And I began to share with him how broken I was, how many lives I have shattered. And I think that's where healing began. Because I began to share with him everything that I thought was wrong with me. And he was saying, no, it's a lot deeper than that, son. It's a lot deeper than that. And I was pretty much complaining instead of telling him exactly what happened. And from that point on, I just made a decision, I'm gonna do whatever I can, Lord, to just allow you to change me, because I kept thinking 25 years, I'm 40, 41 at that time. No, 44 at that time, wow. 44 at that time. 25 years. That's 67 when I get out. That's all I kept thinking about. And I did not complain that I didn't deserve it. I was complaining at how dare I ruin so many people's lives. What led me up here was to ruin lives, to ruin more lives. So prison saved me. It saved me. And that's
So
what
Richard, well, if you could just back up a little bit and tell us what happened before prison. You were there for charges of drug possession. Um, how did it lead to drug possession? What got you there in the first place?
Not dealing with pain that I experienced as a child. I'm not scared to admit it. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with the effect of a child brought up in a religious dysfunctional family, the child who was sexually abused, alcoholic stepfather, abusive stepfather, sexual addiction, post-traumatic stress, always in a fight or flight mode. So I grew up with that. And I guess all that led up to wanting to feel important. And what I mean by important is, when you don't have much, anything you have makes you feel important. Better shoes, better clothes, a couple of dollars in your pocket. You don't have to spend food stamps, because at that time you had paper stamps when I was growing up. Just being ashamed. So that what led me down to drugs. I started doing drugs at the age of 17. And all my friends became big drug dealers, and they didn't have any problem. So you're talking about from 87 up to 2018. That's all I knew, is how to ruin people's lives, how to sell drugs, how to do drugs, how to lie, how to manipulate, how to do whatever it took to keep myself happy. And when I found out that you can do a lot more drugs and sell a lot more drugs in West Virginia, I was one of the first trained up here.
So that's what took you to West Virginia.
That's what
Got
brought
it.
me to West Virginia.
So then that's got to be a shock to the system to hear the judge say 3 to 25 years in prison. And so you start. So what did you do while you were in prison?
I found this book called Celebrate Recovery. Didn't know what it was. It was a teacher addiction. First of all, I got a Bible. I went back to my training. There's a passage that said, train a child the way it should go, and that training will never depart from him. So I found a Bible, and I began to really search the passages and the scriptures that was for me, and come to find out all of it was for me. And I came across the Celebrate Recovery manual. And I made you never want to make a vow to God unless you're going to live up to it. So I made a vow: if you change me on the inside, I'll serve you. I'm there for 25 years. I'll serve you. So with that being said, months later, I'm baptizing in the shower. I'm holding 2 to 3 hours Bible study in my dorm. God has granted me favor with the officers, and my dorm began to change because I became an advocate of recovery. I didn't know what a recovery coach was. I just knew, hey, you know, if God could change me, could change anybody. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't using religion. I was just using a relationship I had with God. You know, allowing God to meet them where they were, where they at. You know, don't forget, I grew up in a religious, dysfunctional family. I know
Mm,
all the rules. I know what the church is against. I just didn't know what it stood for.
hmm
So I began to stand on the principles.
And Celebrate Recovery, for those who may not know, Celebrate Recovery is a, Richard, you can fill in the blanks here, but it's a recovery program that many churches in America use, maybe not just churches. And so you found that, and you started, it sounds like you started looking at understanding how you got there. So, but what inspired you? Like, why, I mean, there's lots of ways that you could use your time in prison, and not everybody, goes down the path that you did. What inspired you to say, I'm going to start trying to understand what led me here?
I wanted to deal with what was aching on the inside. I forgot I was abused.
Mm,
I forgot that I was traumatized. I needed to deal with that. I needed to deal with the behavior. What caused the behavior? You know, I can deal with alcohol, and I can go to AA and deal with that. I can deal with the narcotics. I can go to NA and CA and WA and BA and all the other A's. We can go to that. But what I needed to deal with was the root. What was the problem? Why am I acting like this? Why do I want to hurt? And painful people bring pain to others, or hurt people hurt others, however you want to say it. So I wanted to deal with the root of the problem, and I'm still dealing with it. Don't
mm,
get me wrong, I'm still dealing with it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But I didn't want to come out the same way I went in, broken, spiritually broken, angry, malicious, uh, dangerous. I didn't want to come out like
mm-hmm. And before I go to Mariah here, Richard, so tell us well, so first of all, you're then in prison until, I think, August of 2020. Is that right?
that. Actually,
December of 2020.
December
So
2020.
you're in prison during, I mean, there's lots of things happening in the country at that time. Politically, the 2020 election is happening, polarization is going through the roof. The coronavirus pandemic starts. And so I don't know if, I think that maybe, I think you told me that affected your prison. You could tell us about that. But so take us to kind of fast forward here. What led to your getting out of prison in 2020, and what did you do after that?
Well, I was stalled in prison. I was supposed to get out in November, but I was stalled an additional month because of COVID. Um, I was in a work release center in Charleston. That's what led me to Charleston. And then I had a quadruple open heart surgery while I was in prison during the COVID. This is August of 2020. That's why you probably mentioned August of 2020. When I left CAMC, I went to a level 5 prison, which was Mount Olive. And that was the worst breakout prison in West Virginia. So now I'm gutted open, and I'm in the prison that has all of the COVID cases.
Oh,
You
wow.
talk, you're talking about 400 cases a month. So I'm seeing death all around me. I am seeing people roll in, roll out in the infirmary, and yet I'm stuck there in a level 5, starting everything over because I was prepared to leave in November, but I'm in a new prison. Nobody knows who I am. I am crying out to God, why in the heck I am here? What the heck did I do wrong? You know? But in December, when I was let out from Mount Olive, the decision was already made back in 2018. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going back. So when I left December 2020 for Mount Olive, my church that I was attending while I was inside of Charleston Correction Center, which is Open Door Apostolic in Charleston, accepted me. And they gave me a place to dwell and allow my ministry that God had laid before me to flourish. So as of today, I am a recovery coach professional. I am a peer recovery support specialist. I am a grace recovery facilitator. I'm also a leader in Celebrate Recovery at Open Door. And I'm a servant, a son, and I'm having the best time of my life.
That's awesome.
Best time of my life.
So let's see. About a year ago, today, August, you're having quadruple bypass surgery. I think I heard you say. COVID is all over the place in the prison, and you're wondering what's going to happen here. And a year later, here you are sharing your story and perspective here. Wow.
In West Virginia.
In West Virginia. Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
Mariah, let's go to you. So Mariah, I want to go to July 5th, 2020. It's the middle of the pandemic. You had been using heroin and other drugs trying to get clean, and you just lost your job. So first, tell us what happened that day, July 5th, 2020. And then second, what led to your being in that place you were on July 5th, 2020?
Wow. Well, it's gonna be hard to follow that one. That was great, Richard. I've beginning to July 5th. Well, so, let me put it this way. I like you said, David, I lost my job. Got a phone call that I lost my job due to COVID, and the factory was kind of changing a lot of things that I was at, and I was their staffing agency. So that was huge, huge, huge blow to the gut. I'd been living with family after a severe breakup. And that's the I'm so sorry. A little kitten here trying to attack my phone.
Mariah has cats that love her.
He's driving me crazy. I'm trying to keep him at bay, but he's not. He might be joining us at some point, so he'll leave me alone. Anywho, no, July 5th, it was a blow to the gut because, the last thing I want to do is put any burden on my family, especially, I was already staying there. I didn't want to put any financial burden as well. And I had slipped up prior to that, and really hadn't told anyone. I don't still to this day. This is kind of me saying, hey, I kind of kept it to myself, just because I knew immediately when I got that phone call, and I knew it, I'd already been slipping up due to COVID and everything.
And when you say slipping up, do you mean with drug use, Mariah?
Yes. And I decided, this is the last thing I need is to be out here without a job and, everything. And then not only that, depending on family, and then trying to stay away from the wrong crowd, but sticking right with them at the same time, because that's what you end up doing. At least myself anyway, for some reason. I would go back every single time to try and help them, and then I would not be strong enough myself. And working a program like Richard said, that CR program is amazing. It saved my life as well. Actually, it's kind of crazy. So I knew I had to get out of there, and I found myself broke down in Middletown, across from I consider I call them my family. They're very, very close with me. There were some kids I had taken care of. Their family, other side, lived in Middletown, and I found myself across the street, pretty much broke down. My truck was beyond fixing that night, and I had an opportunity last minute to go to Michigan, and I knew I mean, I really didn't. It was kind of a stupid idea. I didn't know the people I was going with as well as I should have. But I knew that, I needed to get out, and I couldn't, I was too old to be living home with family, depending on my family. So I thought it was a better idea to go out and venture off to the biggest city, I could, and try to restart again,
Mm,
and then maybe help my family by doing so in the long run.
mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, as you'll see, it didn't work out, but I
Because
tried.
this was after Mariah, after about how many years had you been um, struggling with drug use at that point?
Um, I would say on and off since I was 15, 16 years old. But before that, I had been completely clean of any heroin or meth use for like 5 years.
Mm, mm-hmm. And for you, how when you look back, how did that start and how did that develop and to the point where you were uh, pretty dependent on it?
Well, it all started when I was 15, really. My mom passed away in my arms. And I just kind of died with her.
Mm,
So to speak. To be real blunt about it, half of me is still to this day not fully there. Um, that was my best friend. She was my mom and my best friend. That was my whole world. And God rest her soul. She had some medical issues and Jesus decided, hey, he needed one hell of a guardian angel for me because he knew I was going to be one wild child from hell. I guess. But yeah, sadly, she left me back in, oh my gosh, it's been 20 years. She left me back in 2007. And just losing her, I kind of lost my mind. And I started off with pills, and it just kind of went from there. I ended up getting prescribed um, stronger pain medication because the doctors swore up and down there was all this wrong with me, which, yeah, there probably was. I lived a fast, hard, young life on my own choices. It was no one else's but my own. Um, however, that led me to going to pain management and other things, and they did not hesitate to hand me the first pain medication prescription they could think of, and also do procedures that in the long run ended up causing me more issues.
mm, mm-hmm. And then so you started because of the pain, you were prescribed pain medication that led to the addiction deepening, and then it just went to kind of hard drugs from there.
Yeah, I do apologize. um,
You don't need to apologize at
his
all.
name is Wild Man for a reason. Can I say that?
Oh, wild man.
Yeah. But yeah, it went from that, and it it works for so long, and then you in return you get a tolerance, and I had a tolerance to I can't even explain how high my tolerance became, unfortunately. And then somebody would offer me the next strongest thing, like if I was hurting extremely bad one day, and my medicine of course quit working because I've been on it for a while, and I didn't want to keep taking those. I was like, well, I'll just take something stronger and knock myself out and be okay. And then, which in return, I was trying to self-diagnose myself really instead of going to the doctor and going to the hospital. Because what they would do is give me one kick, strong dose, kick it in the butt, let me go, and then from there it was manageable. So I thought, oh well, maybe I can do that. No, 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 no. Not the right thing. Do not self-diagnose. Do not take medicine that the doctor doesn't hand you. And even then, question what the doctor hands you. Especially in this day and age. I'm not saying anything against anyone, but in my particular experience, that is what led me stronger and stronger pain medication. And then, if somebody said, "Oh, hey, you're having an anxiety attack," here's what they call a downer. You know, um, it was just numerous self-diagnoses and continuation of self-medicating and hanging out with people that I knew I probably shouldn't be.
Right.
And I always hung out with an older crowd as well because they were wiser and knew better. It just you got to really pick, I want to say pick who you hang around. At first, yes, but you got to make sure you refill yourself and keep yourself to a maintainable level before you go out and try to help others.
Right.
It's great
Right.
to help others, and I myself have a dream that is bigger than myself, and I know that it's bigger than myself and my husband as well. But without my higher power, which I consider to be the Lord and Jesus Christ, there's just no way that I would even be here. But I do love the idea of helping others. I just definitely have gotten myself into some situations as well, also trying to do so when I was not maintaining my own
Right.
spirituality and well-being.
Well, so Mariah, so then July 5th, 2020 happens. You're kind of at the end of your rope. You just lost your job, and you know that this is going to be it's going to be very easy for you to relapse hard into drugs. And so you end up going with this basically this strangers, you hardly knew them, up to Michigan. And what happened there that you were able to start taking the path to recovery?
Honestly, it was just it was moving up there and taking everything that I learned off and on through addiction and going to CR meetings as well. Um, on and off for gosh, 5, 6 years or longer. And just everything that the good Lord's put in front of me, I took that with me in the back of my mind, and fear as well, which I shouldn't have, but I did, of course, understandable. However, I went up there, I didn't know anyone. I was a fresh start. Nobody really knew my history unless I told them. And I just kind of kept to myself. I got there, I got a job as soon as I could. And just to sum it up, there was one day that I was looking at myself. I was one of the lowest points I've ever been, even especially sober. And I was looking at myself thinking, you know, I'm literally 30 minutes from the biggest, well, I don't say the biggest, but, a pretty big city with, quite a bit of people, quite a bit of drugs,
Mm,
and quite accessible with that. All I had to do was walk down the road. And I got on my knees and prayed, and and I ended up going into work early. I called my manager and I said, "Look, I'm going to come into work or I'm going to relapse." And thank God, my manager at the time, she said, "Why aren't you here yet? Where are you at? Do I,
mm,
pretty much, do I need to come get you?" Like, so I mean,
wow.
I
You
feel like the
called your
Lord,
manager to say, I need to come into work early. Yeah.
yes,
Wow. So I want to go back to you, Richard, here, and then I'll come back to you, Mariah. Richard, you told me last week when we were preparing for this, you said men are tired of being broken. We can throw all kinds of money there, but we need to look at the root. If you want prison reform, stop the revolving door and deal with the trauma. So, Richard, let me ask you, let's say that you were in charge of the prison and the legal system in America. What would you do?
Ah, um, I think we spoke again, and about Angola prison that's in Louisiana, and what one of the leaders in Angola prison in Louisiana, what did he do? He implemented um, principles that men can live by, and inmates became accountable to each other. So I take that and I say, well, if that can happen in one prison, you talk about one of the worst prisons that was in America at that time, and it was in Louisiana, Angola, Louisiana. That's where Malachi Dads was actually originated from. And if he can take principles, good principles, and most of them was biblical principles, and apply them to the rules of the prison, it'll change prison. And men's begin to heal from the inside versus trying to solve the exterior problem. Men's are broken. They're tired of being broken. Their spirit is broken. They're hopeless. When you have men in prison that rather stay in prison than come out and do what's right, then you have to address the issue. You have to address the problem. So if I was a shepherd, I wouldn't know the state of my flock. And I will put whatever I can to feed my flock, because I want my flock to be healthy when they leave. I don't want them to return. It's going to hurt the ones that has investments in prison, sure. But it's going to make a better America.
What do you mean by that, Richard? It's going to hurt the one that's going to have investments in prisons? Elaborate on that.
Well, prison is big business. Let's not fool ourselves. It's big business. That's why you got so much money. That's why you building so many of them and not enough schools, because a child without a father has over 50%, he will go towards prison. He will end up in prison. So you have fathers beating their sons in prison. Somebody's making money off of that. And you're building more of them. In West Virginia, you have Department of Correction that runs all of the regional jails and the prisons. So somebody's making finance off of that. So if you want prison reform, you can make all the rules you want to. Go ahead, do that. That don't stop the revolving door. That don't stop them from coming in. That don't stop them from wanting to stay in. You have men that will fight just to get more time to stay in prison. We call it institutionalized. I call it scared of freedom. And you have women's doing the same thing in prison. So know what is needed inside the prison. I would know what is needed inside the prison, and I will feed that.
And for you, that would look like initiatives, programs, things that would try to look at helping people to look at what they think might be the roots of the challenges that led them here in the first place.
Correct. Ask motivational interview questions. Ask questions that's going to make a person give you the real answer. Nobody wakes up and want to sell drugs. Nobody wakes up and want to do drugs. Nobody wakes up and want to be an alcoholic. People walk into that because of pain, because of trauma, because of, things that happened. They didn't deal with it in the right way. Good emotions, they didn't deal with good emotions the right way. So it led them down this dark road. Now, I'm not saying all the men are like that, but a good 80% of them don't really want to be in there.
Yeah.
So you deal with the root, and you get rid of the program that has no success in it. You monitor the program that has success, and you feed more of that. Stop throwing a bunch of programs in prison and say, well, we got 100 programs. Yeah, but only 10 works.
What I'm hearing you say, Richard, is you would really try to take rehabilitation and seriously. You would really be trying to help people to heal while they are in prison.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
Stop throwing money towards stuff that don't work to say we're doing something. That's ridiculous. It's like fixing a broke car, knowing you're never going to run it. You're just throwing money towards it to say that we're doing something. No, figure out what works and put the resource towards what works.
Richard, do you think that we are too quick to, that our legal system is too quick to put people in prison?
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. Um, in the legal system, if the judges would just ask the defendant more questions, more honest questions. I mean, yes, you have their record in front of you. You have everything he done wrong. You have nothing he done right. You have everything he done wrong.
Mm,
You know, so wouldn't it prompt you to say, okay, what is really going on? I mean, yes, we ask the victim, you know, and I'm not saying the victim as violent crimes. I'm saying the victim as, you know, we hurt society when we sell drugs. We hurt other people loved when we sell drugs. But nobody, knowing the same person gets up and say, I want to go hurt people.
mm-hmm,
Only hurt people hurt people.
mm-hmm,
So we give the judges more initiative to ask more questions before they hand down their ruling. And
mm,
then find the program that's in the community that actually working and feed those programs.
mm.
Every
If you were the,
program in the, go ahead.
if you were Judge Richard Washington, what would you ask?
What's really going on? Why are you hurting people? You know, we took some type of psychology class to get into a professional position. One of the psychology class that we took was motivational interview questions. Just ask questions that's going to get you the answer that you desire.
Mm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
to help that individual. So if I was a judge, I would ask questions before I hand down a ruling because I have everything you've done wrong in front of me. But tell me what you've done right. Did you finish school? You know, stop filling the prison up with people that doesn't have violent crimes. You know, you'll stop building prisons.
mm-hmm. I want to go to you, Mariah, and ask you, if you were in charge of addressing addiction, drug addiction in America, what would you do? What's your dream for how we in America address drug addiction?
I have just similar, very, very similar outlook as Richard as well. Just as far as getting to the root of, you know, the addiction and the cause, like nobody's recovery and nobody's addiction is the same. Nobody. I don't care if our choice of drug and our path to recovery, you know, and our way of dealing with it is identical, and what happened to us is identical. It doesn't matter. You have to really, like you said, get down to the root, the cause, and you know, find out what's really going on. I would love to take some of these medically and unmedically assisted treatments that are scamming the heck out of insurance. And, you know, and I think Richard had mentioned this as well. Um, Start monitoring those a lot more than what they are being monitored now. Um, and put more effort into the ones that are getting success and having people with long-term recovery, you know, and successful. And, you know, stop maybe funding the ones that are just, here you go, here's a prescription, or we're just going to sit here and act like we're talking to you, but not, and fill out paperwork and send you on your way and bill your insurance $400 a visit and $800 a prescription. Um, you know, and just start having compassion for human beings. We're not, you know, just because one person has a sugar addiction and one person has a heroin addiction, I'm sorry. To me, that's, you know, hey, either or, both those people, if they're asking for help, should be able to receive genuine help. And I just feel like, you know, there should be more actual funding out there for, and not just funding, but more of us to come together like we are now, you know, and get the word out more, and just, you know, have compassion for one another and put your hand out. speak up. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are scared to speak up.
Hmm. I know you told me in a prior conversation, you said that people are quicker to judge than they are to help. Do you, as somebody who's recovering from addiction, do you feel that stigma and judgmentalism from people often?
It honest, it depends. If I'm going to a doctor, yeah, every time. I recently went to a doctor here where I live and didn't even explain any of the history with her yet. All she did was look at my prescription list, which, mind you, I'm not on any massive painkillers anymore, thank the Lord. Just my regular allergy medicine and just a few other things for like fibromyalgia and things. And she absolutely went through the roof on me and said, "Well, we're not giving you any of these prescriptions, including my sinus medication, which was not, like sinus meds." And I had to actually move back doctors and pay cash more out of my pocket because of a stigma. And but also, I mean, there are people. Don't get me wrong. There are people out there that are willing to help, but they're far and few between sometimes.
Mm,
People, they say they want to help, and we have these people that want to help but haven't been through addiction themselves, or haven't, have more of a biased opinion about it. I guess I would feel I could say, and it's not always the greatest.
mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm,
feel like a lot of it is like there's clinics all over, but where are the actual people that's been through it and that want to help? They don't get the spotlight. They don't get oftentimes don't aren't heard, and oftentimes are very scared to speak up because they may have the police knocking at the door the next minute because, oh hey, they're in town, or oh hey, they spoke up. I mean, it goes back and forth, and it may not just be the police, it may be their family. you know I mean, I myself am letting out information tonight that people I've had to keep to myself.
mm,
There's a lot of childhood history that and relationship history that I still yet am not comfortable with sharing because of particular reasons.
right. You told me, Mariah, about your dream. You have a dream of starting a rehab that would it would have animals, it would have people. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, I guess you can consider it a farm with just everything you can think of. But like you said, David, between animals, crops, farms, um, farmland, whatever. I actually came up with a slogan because of this meeting tonight, out of nowhere. Thank you, David, for inviting me tonight, and also kind of get me thinking about that again because it's been a while since I've really put any thought to it. I just got discouraged on it for a little bit. But needless to say, what I wrote down was a place for you, me, and every soul we see. Because I feel
Mm,
like it's not just addiction. People that dealt with addiction that need help. Like Richard had mentioned, a lot of us addicts and a lot of us, either per se people that have addiction that aren't ready to admit it, or also that people that are just dealing with trauma in general, they need help too. You don't have to pick up drugs to need help. And so I feel like if I could somehow, some way, if the Lord be willing, one day have a place where it's a big farm. We have a couple multiple buildings, whatever. Again, this is very very foggy in my brain. I haven't really put it down on paper. But what it would be is the people that would be staying there, that would be receiving the therapy, would take care of the farm and the animals. The animals would be coming from all different types of backgrounds as well, from abuse to, just coming out of a shelter or something. Trying to relieve some of the shelter space for the animals. Just anything pretty much that we can do to help one another. And we would eat off the land, obviously, and just pretty much be as self-sufficient as we could so we didn't have to rely on nonprofit funds and other funds, but also put back into our society as well and learn to give back in order to keep ourselves right and out of our own heads. Because
Mm,
sometimes when you sit, even in a counseling session and you leave, that stays with you. And sometimes people, I feel like even myself, have left a counseling session, and it may have been a great counseling session, but it brought back some of that trauma fresh,
mm,
and I felt the need to go use.
right.
Whether I did or not, that need is still there. Like I
Hmm.
think so. Just a safe home, pretty much.
Yeah. You, me, and every soul we see. It's beautiful, Mariah.
Thank you, David.
Let's go now to discussion. Let's expand this conversation, and I want to invite two things. One is if you have direct experience of the issues we're talking about tonight, incarceration, drug addiction. We didn't even really get into homelessness, but that's there too. I'm going to invite you to weigh in and make a comment. Take up to 2 minutes to make a comment, and if you have a question, anyone can ask a question. Feel free to ask a question. So I want to first go to Morgan Brown. Morgan Brown said he's from I was Montpelier, Vermont, and
Montpelier.
I knew I was going to say
Montpelier.
that wrong. Go ahead, Morgan. You wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, but I might go a little longer. Anyway, I've never been incarcerated, not in prison or jail, but I have had ended up locked up in a psychiatric facility because I was severely depressed and uh, was experiencing severe suicidal ideation, and I have tried to take my life since I was a teenager. Um, my first experience with living unhoused, also known as homeless, um, was when I was 17 and I was fleeing severe emotional, psychological, and physical abuse. And uh, my dad and I confronted each other outside, and I didn't feel like getting beat. So, I took off and I put my thumb out and ended up all the way from Massachusetts all the way down to Florida. Then found my address from my mother, uh, and who I hadn't seen since I was an infant child, and uh, went back up to Rhode Island and uh, um, met her for the first time
Hmm.
in 17 years. And uh, I just had clothes on my back, and I hadn't eaten in about 3 days. And a short haul trucker picked me up, and I was in bad shape, and uh, I was a little hesitant getting in the truck, and he recognized that, and he struck up conversation when he felt that you know I was open to it. He offered some assistance, and I had my first meal in days.
Hmm.
And sorry, but all this still runs deep. And you know, uh, he had well before the meal, he asked questions and asked about my story and what was up and all that, and I shared what I could, and so I had a good meal, and then he made me call my mother, and last thing he did was ask me to promise to take care of myself,
Hmm.
and
Mm.
I thought that was a not necessarily an easy thing uh, to do. I wasn't sure if I could promise that, but what I did say is I do my best. And the way I figure how you think people like that who go the gracious extra mile and beyond is to do the same for others who
Hmm.
cross your path. So, that's become my mission. That's
Wow,
what I try to do.
that's
And,
powerful, Morgan.
I've lived homeless off and on for much of my adult life, and, in different forms. And my last go around was 12 years, which didn't end until mid-August 2009. And I've been housed since in a small efficiency apartment. And I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. No one needs to answer. But think to yourself, besides, you know, affordable housing and the other deep subsidies and other things that go into helping somebody get housed, like myself. Uh, and I had disability and SSI income, okay, Social Security income, and I couldn't afford a place. And I'd even have housing vouchers, and the demand is so high for housing, and the rents are so high I couldn't use it. So what's the one thing, among many things, what's the one thing that helps people get housed and maintain housing? Besides, rent being paid and all that, uh, you know, and, and actual housing. What's the one
Yeah.
thing? Think to yourself, what's the one thing?
Morgan, that's an
And
excellent question. And
what
let's
the
go ahead,
answer I
finish it
give
up with
is
that.
the answer I give is this, and sorry for being long, but it's relationships. Some people
Mm,
call it connections, but I believe relationships, and that's what helped get me housed more than once, especially this time. And
mm,
and that's why I believe in the housing first model. And in Vermont, we have Pathways Vermont, and that helps people who have given up on themselves and who have been given up on by others, get
wow.
housing. Thank you.
Morgan, this is so powerful what you're saying, and I wish you could talk for longer. What I do want to say is that there is a Darcy Crosman on the call here tonight. She's a part of the leadership team for We the People's Forum. Darcy is organizing a Braver Angels town hall on the issue of housing and homelessness.
Mhm.
And so, Morgan, I'm going to put you in touch with her, and maybe there's a way, Darcy, we can get that. If you can hear me, there's a way we can get that information out to the people on this call for anyone else that might be interested in participating in that. You should definitely be there, Morgan. I
Okay.
can hear that you have a lot to say on that issue from
I'm
personal
gonna send you
experience.
I'll send you my email address in the chat. So
Great.
you can send it to Darcy.
Excellent.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Yeah, bye.
And then I think it was Wilk. You're next. Did you have a question or a comment, Wilk? You're muted right now, Wilk.
I don't, can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm having a problem with my microphone for some reason, but anyways, the question that I wanted to ask, first of all, I want to thank Richard and Mariah for tonight for their testimony. It's absolutely incredible. Just the ability for you to sit up here and get in front of everybody and testify with your story is great, and that takes a lot of courage, and thank you for it. Um, the question that I have for both of you is, how do you see the system perpetuating the cycle of addiction, the system that we have? And then this one would be more towards Richard. Do you think that attacking the problem before it becomes a problem makes more sense? I know you talked a lot about how we would treat people after they're already in prison, but like you mentioned, you brought up the fact that the fatherless homes and things like that, and we do know, based on statistics, that more by a 70-1 margin, I think it is, more children that grow up in fatherless homes end up in poverty, and more importantly in prison or dead before the age of 25. So do you think it is more important to attack the problem before it becomes a problem than attacking it after those children, men, women, whatever, are in prison? And then how could our system do better at attacking that problem before it becomes a problem, and not perpetuating the cycle of addiction and imprisonment like you were talking about, Richard?
Good question, Will. Yes, I do believe in dealing with the problem beforehand, before a person would get to prison or go to prison. It starts in the community. The community need to recognize what it needs. And if I was a community leader, I would try to figure out what my community needs. And right now, my community needs, all community needs men's back in position. When we put men's back into position, then everything else will fall in line. So we need more, I'm trying to think of the word. We need more, really trying to think of the word.
Strong father figures.
We need real strong father figures. Basketball players are not strong father figures. I mean, half of them came up broken, and without their basketball skills, they'll probably be with us on this Zoom call. Guarantee it. So we need stronger father figures in the community. And we need boys to look up to men, strong men that doesn't have fathers in their home. So we need to expand more on big brother clubs. We need to expand more on, men just working with kids in general. I'm trying to find this word. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we need to tackle the problem before we get to prison. Well, we really do. So if I was a community leader, I'll find out what my community needs. If my community is full of women and stuff, then I'm not going to bring in a bunch of men that don't want to help. I'm bringing a bunch of father figures. I'm going to go knock on doors and say, hey, would you maybe show up at the rec hall and play basketball with some of the kids that doesn't have fathers? So they'll have a general idea of what a father looks like. So I mean, we have to pay attention to the next generation. We pay attention to the next generation, we'll stop the cycle.
That's absolutely right.
But thank you for your, go ahead. Well, just I want to move on to the next person, Book, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But thank you for your question. And I want to go to Rita, and then Susan Leon's after that. Rita.
Because by Rita, do you mean me?
Oh, Rita Chisholm.
Different one. Okay.
Yeah, Rita Chisholm.
I'm having such a
Rita, are you able to speak up? Looks like she froze. Okay, let's go to Susan. Susan, go ahead and unmute. Susan with the cat in the background.
Not a cat. So first, I just wanted to say thank you to Richard and Mariah for sharing your all stories and for speaking. It was really insightful, and I really appreciated it. It took a lot of courage to share your stories, and I thought it was ironic that you both kept speaking about and kept saying root, getting to the root of the problem, because that's been something that's been kind of sticking with me. And I've been really interested in, I'm sorry, that's my son, he just woke up, in trauma and treating trauma, getting to the root of the problem, because I think of it like when a tree is planted and unhealthy soil, right, it affects the growth of the tree. It affects the leaves, and it also affects the fruit that it produces. And so it's the same way with people, depending on not only the environment, but also the history of what that person has gone through. It affects, that entire person's life, and also generational trauma. It's just so real. And so knowing that this is something that needs to be addressed, and it is being addressed, and that we're all acknowledging this, is very encouraging and comforting to know. And I don't know, I'm excited because it's nice to see that we're all kind of on the same, we know that something needs to be done, and we're getting it. So I just wanted to kind of say that. And
Great. Thank you, Susan. Rita Chisholm, and then Rixa Mix, and then Porus. So Rita, you first.
Thank you so much. I guess I froze up there for a minute. I do want to thank both of our speakers, and I want to make one comment and then ask an important question. The comment is, Richard, I wondered if you were looking for the word role model, people that can live what they exemplify what it means to, live a wholesome, healthy life, maybe. I'm a big person. I've always looked for role models in my life, and they're important. They still continue to be important. I'm 63 years old and they're still important to me. So, but I do have a question for those of us that have never dealt with addiction. Well, let me clarify that. What was said earlier about sugar addictions, that's me. So we all have something that we turn to soothe whatever ails us within, right? There's a long list of that. But when you're dealing with a loved one that you're very close to, and they have a long history of addiction, and there's a lot of energy and love and blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into trying to help and direct them. And we know that addiction, I can't imagine what it must be like to be addicted to any kind of drug, but I have experienced that it's kind of like the boy that cried wolf. You try and you try and you try, and you have some success, but then, and this is not anything against the addict, it's that what does someone do when they've tried and tried and tried and tried? And of course, if you're a family member, it's difficult to separate yourself from that because you're not going to shut them out of your life. But do you know what I'm asking? What is the right thing for someone that you've tried to help for an extended period of time, and you kind of grow weary? You kind of feel like there is nothing left to do. I mean, you've given money, you've given time, you've given love. I mean, you've done as much as everything that you have to offer. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, good question, Rita. Mariah, I would invite you to weigh in first if you'd like.
Definitely, yes, that's a great question. I have so many different answers to that. One is loving from afar is not always the worst thing. If it, I don't expect anyone, and this is coming from a fellow addict, I don't expect anyone, to completely 110% mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, whatever it is, drain themselves to help anyone else, because if you don't at some point say, okay, if whether it be helping someone or whatever it is, you still have to be okay yourself in order to help anyone else. And I feel like codependency is a humongous word there. I myself feel like codependency led to part of my addiction. I didn't really get into all of that tonight, And if anyone has any further questions or anything like this, let me know after. However, codependency is huge, and there is, just like recovery, no way that anyone deals with it the same. No one family member is the same. No one friend is the same. Just like as no one addiction. But, you know, the addict themselves has to want help themselves. We can help and we can give every resource we have. And like I said, drain ourselves to no point of return. But however, until they are ready, and you would think, you know, dying multiple times would be enough. And it might be for one person. It might not even take that for another. But somebody else, you know, you just never know. And unfortunately, you know, like Richard said, we don't wake up one day and decide, oh, this is what we're going to do for the rest of our life. But we also don't, you know, we don't just take everything somebody's gotten in my what's the word I'm looking for now? My experience, we don't just, you know, take everything from one person and okay, we get all your money, all your time like this. This one person is just all right here next to us. And oh, we can be clean now. You know, I really do wish it was that easy, because I have had a few people, you know, that would have done that. And if they could have walked in my shoes, they would have for me. But in all reality, you never know when you're going to come up and walk down the street, unfortunately, and see a trigger or have that PTSD moment that just, you could be doing great for 6 months and then, you know, just something break out. And if you don't get connected with that right, you know, right time, right person, whatever your thing is, you know, it's not always a failure to the addict or the person helping the addict. Sometimes it's just what happens. The Lord gave us free will, and sometimes, unfortunately, we decide to use it in ways that, you know, is unfortunate. But don't ever take that upon yourself to hurt yourself and feel bad about yourself. Please, I
Richard,
didn't want to mention that.
Richard, I want to invite you to just, sorry, Mariah, Richard, I want to invite you to just briefly weigh in. Just take up to 30 seconds, and I want to go to Rick's mix.
Leave the front door open and the screen door closed. Set boundaries. Set boundaries. Set boundaries where you're not going to get hurt, because you're no good to us if you're hurt. So set boundaries.
Thank you.
Feed, you know, if we're hungry, you feed us, because that's what the good book says. We need love, but we don't need to hurt you at the same time. So set your boundaries of what you are and are not willing to accept. When the front door is open, I'm gonna leave with the front door is open, an addict knows that I can always go home. But when the screen door is closed, the addict knows that, hey, there's some boundaries there. So.
Thank you, Richard and Mariah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, and you can tell me if I'm saying this right. Rick's mix.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I want to thank both the speakers for sharing. It was really, really good. I relate to a lot. I'm not comfortable sharing all my story, but I have spent 12 years on the manufacturing warehouse floors across the Midwest of America. And I feel like for the last 100 years or so, the motto has been sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And really trauma is the combination of both those hitting us repeatedly over time. And we get to the point where, you know, some people fall into addictions just to numb it. And I've felt that hurt. I've been battling and recovering also. And the biggest takeaway I got from this is to maintain my family situation with my young child and try to keep both parents around for her and raise her the best that I can and not damage her in the ways that I've been damaged, and find trauma-informed care for my own hurt. And again, speakers, I want to thank you so much.
Yeah, well, that's I'm going to invite Marty Steiner is from Grace. Richard is a Grace recovery coach. Marty, why don't you just take you and then John, who's also from Grace, just take up to 3 minutes to say anything you want to about Grace and how people can get involved if they would like to. Take the floor, Marty.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Again, I would like to reaffirm what everybody said, and I would like to thank Mariah and Richard for sharing their stories. Also, Morgan and Rix and Mix also for sharing a little bit of your story, because your story of resilience, it can definitely empower other folks to think about their own journey. I did want to say Richard is also a facilitator for Grace. So what we do in our trainings, like he's one of those most excellent, I might add, facilitators. He's our newest, but definitely he's right up there with all of us. So our nonprofit Grace is Greater Recovery and Community Empowerment. And actually, the nonprofit was born in response to the 2016 floods in southern West Virginia. John Unger, myself, and a gentleman named Bill Saviors, we came together in particular and worked in Clay County, which is, I think, the second poorest county in West Virginia, as it was really hit hard by the floods. And John Unger, basically, he started a greater long-term recovery committee in Greenbrier County and came to Clay County and shared with us this committee. And in essence, it's a strengths-based, asset-based committee. It says, what is the issue? And as a community, what can we do to address that? And then what are the outside resources we need? A year later, John Unger and I were both trained as recovery coaches. And it was, for me at least, it was at that moment where I was like, aha, this is something we can actually do, starting just one-on-one, working with one person, and be able to help heal and transform communities. And in essence, that's basically what we've done from that point. So our organization, since 2017, we've trained over 3,000 recovery life coaches. And we really do look at, trauma-informed, strengths-based relationships. How can we as coaches walk with people as they navigate their journey to recovery? And when we talk about recovery, we also agree, our organization, we believe that addiction in particular is a side effect of trauma. It's the way people deal with either emotional or physical pain. One of the things I like to share is, in West Virginia at least, 80% of the folks who suffer an opioid addiction began that addiction with a valid prescription prescribed from a doctor. So as coaches, what we believe is, what we do as a coach, what do we do? We listen and ask good questions. We ask those motivational interviewing questions. We empower the coachee to find the resources that they need, that's going to work for them. We believe in the capacity for change. We believe that they can change, and we share hope. And we're an advocate with the coachee and the community. The prerequisite to being a coach is that you are just willing to walk with someone as they improve. They choose their own path. We're just there to ask good questions and empower them to find the resources they need to become successful and to either heal or become that person that they're truly called to be. So our training is one part of what we focus on in our organization. The other part is actually building those relationships. We have a platform where people can volunteer and work with other folks that are requesting, a life coach or recovery coach. We train high schoolers. So we actually look at what we do as prevention. We kind of talked about that. How do we prevent some of the long-term issues that can happen? Because, I will say that, for example, in Clay County, we actually went back in 2019, the winter of 2019, just before COVID, and we trained all of their 11th graders in this course, which, by the way, also we have a relationship with West Virginia Higher Education, so you get college credit for it. We also have a relationship with the certifying organization institution here in West Virginia for peer recovery support specialists, which is a different job, but it's similar. It's similar enough that our education counts towards education for both. But we trained the 11th graders in Clay County. And just before we began the training, the counselor came to us and she said, 80% of the students in this school are directly impacted by addiction. It's in their families. And so, so we look at it as prevention as well. We also worked with the West Virginia Board of Nursing. They have nurses that coach other nurses because of the effects of COVID. In the healthcare profession, it's been very difficult this past year. And also we work with EMS, and also we trained the State Police Academy in 2020. So there are different groups and institutions that look at this, and because basically what we do is we walk with people as they improve their lives. They set up goals, they improve their lives, and they truly become the people that they're called to be.
Marty, we have a question from a John Ofterhide. He's in Ashland, Oregon, I think. And John was wondering if Grace has branches in other cities, and also maybe you could just tell us if somebody wants to be a coach, sign up to be a coach. How do they do that? Sure.
I'm not sure if I can put things in chat, but certainly if you get on our website, it's www.strength, as in muscles, strengthingrace.com. You can contact us that way. You can also look at our class schedule. So while we have focused the last 3 years in West Virginia, I believe that we are on the verge of actually training out of state very soon, probably at the end of this year. And we've also trained folks from 6 other states. So our training currently is primarily virtual. So anyone who's interested can sign up for the class. If you live in West Virginia, there is actually a grant money through West Virginia Higher Education. You can apply for a scholarship. Also, we will not ever turn anyone away. Because our focus of our nonprofit is how do we help empower folks? How do we reduce stigma around addiction and other issues? And how can we actually empower those folks to become who they're called to be? So.
Beautiful. And before we go to our checkout question, which is going to be, what are you taking away with you from this conversation tonight? And I'm going to ask anyone to respond. What are you taking away with you from this conversation tonight? I do want to invite John Ungar, whom you mentioned, Marty. John, if you want to take briefly just up to a minute to just say anything that you want to say. John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, David. I guess the one thing I'll say is, first of all, thank you for this opportunity, everybody, to be here. I want to say that they say the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
Oh, sorry about that, John. You got accidentally muted. If you could unmute yourself, John.
The opposite of trauma is relationships. And that was brought up over and over again. And I think that that's where it boils down to, that what a coach does is actually learn how to not only have relationship with others, but also particularly with themselves. We've somehow forgotten that component. And in order to address the trauma that we've all experienced, especially in a post or a COVID pandemic world that we're living in, is getting these skill sets in order to reconnect and develop relationships. And the one thing about the partnership with Braver Angels is that Braver Angels brings together people in a forum, in a safe space where relationships can be developed. And if you want to see the division, the reason why we have such division in this country is because of trauma that's broken down relationships. And so Braver Angels allows that forum and that space. What I would say Grace does in a good partnership, like a hand in glove with Braver Angels, is that it actually equips people to continue on those relationships in the future, ongoing. So you come together and meet in those forums through Braver Angels and discussion, but Grace gives you the skill sets, the training to be able to continue those relationships even beyond the forums. And so if you're interested in being a coach, you You definitely do not have to be a person in recovery from substance use disorder. We're all in recovery from trauma from one sort or another. Please be willing, please step up and say, you know what, I'd like to be a connector. I'd like to be a coach. I like to be somebody who can bridge and develop those relationships, those connections in my community and with my, and even with myself. So anyhow, thank you,
Excellent.
David, for the opportunity.
Excellent. And August the 30th, we are going to have a Braver Angels Common Ground workshop on addressing the drug addiction crisis. I just put the registration info in there. You're welcome, particularly those who've been affected by this, whether as a parent or personally or a friend. What we're going to do is it's going to be a small group of about 16 of us, people from across the political spectrum, and we're going to see what areas of common ground we can find on addressing the drug addiction crisis. This is a Braver Angels workshop. Please consider joining us for that. The registration info is there. All right, let's open this up before we head out. What are you taking with you from this conversation tonight? Just raise your hand. Who would like to say something? Just in a sentence or so, very briefly. What are you taking with you from this conversation tonight? I saw Dwayne, or yes, Dwayne. Go ahead, Annette.
Okay. Well, I really like, I mean, the whole thing was awesome, and I too applaud the speakers, but the addiction is a side effect of trauma. I think that was kind of a theme that carried throughout in one way, shape, or form. And it's just so true, it's all trauma based.
Who else? What are you taking with you from this conversation tonight? Yes, Mariah.
I'm taking away a lot. I'm actually going to be rewatching this later on and taking a lot of notes on Richard's, just everything he went over. There was a lot of good quotes in there that I feel like could be in a book, and I feel like, Richard, you would be an amazing candidate for a book. You guys, thank you all for sharing your story. And the tree analogy, I want to bring up that I've been looking for something for a recovery tattoo, and I'm horrible with names. I do apologize. I don't remember the name, but the amazing young lady that brought that up actually just gave me a new idea. So thank you. Taking away a lot tonight, you guys. Like I said, I'm gonna be rewatching this and going over it. The flight or fight was definitely a huge thing with me, and I think that's a lot with a lot of people. Sometimes we don't notice when our loved ones are in that, and or we not necessarily don't notice when our loved ones are in it, but our loved ones don't notice when they're in it. So just give your loved one an extra hug sometimes, and tonight maybe, and tell them that you love them, and because you never know who's struggling out there. Also, don't be too hard on yourself.
Yes, thank you, Mariah. Suzanne, what are you taking with you from this conversation tonight? You're muted, Suzanne.
There we go. As a mental health and addiction counselor, I just so thrilled with this conversation. This makes me very joyful. It may sound strange to say that, but just the relationships, the sharing, the truth, it's so meaningful and so heartfelt. And I hear everyone's interest in wanting to know more and wanting to do something about it. And our awareness and knowledge is the start. So thank you. And I initiated a Celebrate Recovery here in my own hometown, went to California and learned about it, and we initiated it here, and it was marvelous. So I was so happy to hear that, Richard, and all the others, and Mariah. Thank you.
Thank you. And Richard, I'm going to give you the last word. What are you taking with you from this conversation tonight? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Richard.
Sorry about that. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for hearing my story. What I'm taking away from this is we need more preventive programs. We need more men's programs that geared towards men. So I come to say, I'm going to call out some of you ladies who have good husbands. Get together with other ladies that have good husbands and ask your men, your husbands, to think of a program that will help men become better men. That's all I ask.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mariah. Thank you to all of those of you who spoke up and contributed to this conversation. Thank you for all the listening ears and caring hearts out there. This has been a We the People's Forum. We will continue this more on other issues next month to be continued. Join the Common Ground workshop on addressing the drug addiction crisis on August 30th coming up. And let's go out there and depolarize America, everyone. Have a great night. Take care.
Thanks, guys, for hearing my story.
Thank you, Mariah. Good night.
Thank you, Mariah and Richard. Thank you for everyone that shared.
Yes.
Thanks to all of you from East Tennessee. We appreciate you and what you're doing.
Yay.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.
David, do you want the team to stay a little bit longer?
Yeah, well, I'll send us a separate Zoom link and we can debrief.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everyone. Apple, you can end this meeting and